Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Budget Review Show. I am your host, Eric Smith, and today I'm talking about The Once Yellow House by Gemma Amor. And this has an introduction, or a foreword, from Eric LaRocca, a cover by Gemma Amor, and I'm not sure who the publisher is. Oh, Cemetery Gates Media. There it is. It's on the inside. Right there. Cemetery Gates Media. All right, so I'm going to read the back cover copy. I've done this quite a few times lately. I don't want it to become a habit, but some books I just think it's better, maybe more clear if I read the back cover copy than I try to give a nutshell. So, The Once Yellow House. The Yellow Massacre of November 19th, 2020, in which 347 members of a secretive society known as the Retinue were brutally slaughtered, has gone down in history as one of the most horrific and compelling unsolved mysteries of the decade, if not century. So far, information about this tragedy has been patchy and heavily censored by authorities. Questions abound. What was the exact cause of death of so many victims? What role did married couple Hope and Thomas Gloucester play in the massacre? What exactly went on at the property known as the Once Yellow House where the Retinue were encamped? And are the rumors true? Were the Retinue really a cult? So far, these questions have gone unanswered. Until now. So, there you go. A cult book. And this is an epistolary novel, which means that it's made up of mainly diary entries from Hope Gloucester and an interview, or the transcript of an interview from a person known as Once Yellow Kate and Hope Gloucester. But there are some emails and some other things, and it includes drawings as well. I happen to have a copy where the drawings are in color, and these are supposed to be sketches and things from Hope's scrapbook / diary. And as I said, this one has color. I believe the newer editions, second printings, they're in black and white. So I don't know if the color version is still available. That's all neither here nor there. I don't think it matters that much. I just got it early enough that I have a color one. So, as I said, it's an epistolary book. So it starts with an editor's note. It actually starts with the foreword from Eric LaRocca, talking about Gemma Amor and her writing, a little bit about this book. But the story starts with a note from the editor. And it is the editor from Cemetery Gates Media, air quotes, who talks about what this book is, and that it's, everyone knows about the Yellow Massacre of 2020. These are materials that we've gotten. We've put them together in what we believe is the proper order, and hopefully our questions will be answered. And then we start with, what do we start with? A little drawing, a little actual note, and then we start with a diary entry. Now, most of the diary entries are in chronological order, but not all of them. And there are plenty of footnotes from the editor, and most of them are just little notes about things that Hope will say in her diary entries. She might mention something that the editor feels needs a little explanation. Like there's a lot of talk about artists. And so, of course, Van Gogh, it's assumed by the editor that everybody knows who Van Gogh is. Although there are some footnotes about Van Gogh, details the general public might not know. But other artists are mentioned very casually because, again, these are diary entries. So Hope isn't writing this down to explain who these artists are. She's just mentioning this artist or that artist or this concept or that concept. And so there are editor notes to sort of clarify what these things are. And one of the editor's notes says that they, I don't remember exactly how they put it, but the diary is part of a scrapbook, and there's a point where it looks like Hope was writing things down in any empty space she could find. So the entries weren't, if you just read from the first page to the last page, the entries aren't actually all in chronological order, because let's say basically she was writing, got to the last page, had to write more, and so she would go back into the book and find any chunk of page that might be blank where she could write. And so, this entry is from October 20th at the end of the book. Whatever, I'm just making these dates up. But there might be an entry earlier in the book from October 31st, because that's where she found a page to write on. Does that make sense? Anyway, the editor explains that and why the things in the book are in the order that they are in. So that's a lot of just talk about the structure of the book. What is the story? Well, it's the story of the Once Yellow House, Hope and Thomas, the retinue, although they don't come in until much, much later. There's a couple letters to the editor to the local town paper, which were fun. But this is a cosmic horror, body horror, cult novel. It's wild. I forgot to mention before I got into all of this craziness, my Too Long Didn't Watch. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I really, really liked this book. And one of the biggest reasons is the things that Hope talks about. So Hope and Thomas, married couple, they've moved into this house that's called the Once Yellow House because it was once yellow. It's a single story. There is an attic, but it's single floor. There's a floor plan that Hope has drawn that's in here. But it's completely run down. It's whatever's next below a fixer-upper, super-duper fixer-upper, and Hope is sort of left to have to deal with all of this because Thomas he works, he brings in the money, and Hope's not in the best state of mind, and there's weird things going on, and it escalates. Things start to escalate, and we're reading basically these diary entries intermixed with these transcripts, because the Once Yellow Kate, or former Yellow, whatever her name is, what do they call her? All right. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time trying to find it. All right. Last chance. Yeah, Once Yellow Kate. That's what she calls herself, because there's an email. So we have the diary entries interspersed with this interview. Once Yellow Kate has found Hope Gloucester after the events of the massacre, and Once Yellow Kate was a member of the cult. And she has found Hope, and is interviewing her. And so basically what we're reading the diary entry, and then we get to the transcript of the interview, and it's as if Hope has told what we've read in the diary entry. She has told that to Kate, and so now we're getting Kate's reaction and their interchange before we get to the next part of the next diary entry, which is what Hope is telling to Kate, if that makes sense. But I don't want to spoil things. So Kate and Thomas, Hope and Thomas in this house. Hope is very, very unhappy. Weird things are happening. Kate has an accident, and then Thomas has a horrible accident, which may or may not be what leads to some of the really crazy stuff that starts to happen. And then people start showing up and setting up tents, and basically the cult forms around the house, and I don't want to tell you what happens to Thomas, but one of the reasons, well, all right, first of all, very well written. I'm a fan of Gemma Amor, and it's a very well written story. I like the epistolary style and the order that Gemma has chosen to tell these things. It's not a straight chronological reading the diaries and the transcripts and all this stuff. There is some jumble to it, and I like that. But the thing that pushes this to a 5, this book pushes my buttons. Not only do we have some incredibly crazy, grotesque, bizarre body horror going on, but I love the idea of geometry having mystical properties, for lack of a better way to put it. That's how I'm putting it. And not just geometry, but also color. There's a lot about art and color in here, but there's also a lot about geometry, and the symbol of the retinue is a triangle with a dot at each corner and a dot in the middle. And this idea has always fascinated me. I think it sort of comes down to, people say that, some people have said, magic is just science we don't understand yet. And I think that can apply to this sort of thing. And it also reminds me of Lovecraft, with the whole, rooms where the angles don't add up properly kind of thing. And just the fact that patterns have power, again, reminds me of Hellraiser and the expanded Hellraiser universe. In the original, the Hellbound Heart, and the movie Hellraiser, the puzzle box. Once you've solved the puzzle box, the Cenobites arrive. And in the expanded universe, it wasn't just a puzzle box. It was patterns. It was all about certain patterns would open up the gates. One of my favorite stories in the comic book, the Hellraiser comic book, one of the iterations of the Hellraiser comic book, was about a pianist, a genius pianist. He was in music school, if I remember correctly, and spoilers for a very, very old comic book story, a rival. So this guy, he was blind. The pianist was blind. But when he would, and there was a piano right inside the hallway, I believe, of where he was living. And when he would get home and walk down that hallway, he would always run his hands along the keys of the piano. And this rival put razor blades between all of the keys. And so this guy, he gets home, he runs his fingers down and just slices his fingers to ribbons, ruining his career. And other stuff happens, but he ends up, he goes in the attic, he lays out all of these blank sheets of music notebook, it's got the lines and stuff on it, music sheets, and he cuts himself somehow. I don't remember where, exactly how much, but he spins around so that the droplets land on the music sheets and form a composition, and then that composition is what opens up the gates that the Cenobites are going to come through. So I just love that kind of stuff, that patterns have power. And that is a huge part of what's going on in this book. So right off, again, Gemma Amor is pushing my buttons. I love that kind of idea. I love the idea of cosmic, unknowable entities. I love the body horror, the things that go on. You can see some birds there on the cover, and there are just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of birds around the Once Yellow house, and they will fly and form patterns, actual geometric patterns. And I just dig it. I love it. So fascinating to me. This is, again, I used this a couple of reviews ago. But it's I always feel like I'm bad mouthing other books, but I think most of my viewers will know by now I have wide tastes and I love well written, trashy horror or trashy anything, pulp horror, pulp stuff. And so when I say that I think this is more intellectual horror, I don't mean that in a bad way at all, and I'm not saying that to denigrate any other horror. I just think, and I hate to use the term elevated horror, but it just has. It's a book that I think is going to make you think. It makes me think. It's got deeper concepts. And again, that doesn't make it a better book than just a nice, well-written, splattery zombie novel, for lack of a better thing to pick. And this is plenty gross and disgusting. There's some wild shit that goes on in this book. But again, it also has these concepts that made me think. I think are going to make you think if you choose to read it, and I recommend you do. 5 out of 5 stars. I just glanced down at the time. I've been rambling for a long time. So 5 out of 5 stars for The Once Yellow House by Gemma Amor. I think I've covered everything so that I haven't spoiled anything. It's the story, Hope and Thomas Gloucester. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. They've moved into the Once Yellow house. Some crazy shit goes down. A cult forms. Even crazier shit goes down. We know that on November 19th, 2020, 347 members of the secret society, the retinue, are massacred. And we're finding out what happened. So there you go. Hopefully, this will interest you because I, again, highly recommend it. I have, fortunately, quite a few of Gemma Amor's other books to read, and there are a few I don't have yet, so I'll definitely be picking those up. But really wild stuff. If you're interested in cults, cult fiction, if you're interested in body horror or cosmic horror or these concepts of patterns having power and that sort of thing, definitely pick it up. So there you go. That is The Once Yellow House, Gemma Amor, 5 out of 5 stars. As usual, I did not think of a question ahead of time. So let's get a little deep. What do you think? What are your feelings on this concept in fiction, in horror, that patterns, geometry, colors, things like this have power? Again, we can go back to Lovecraft. I don't know about before that. I'm not a horror historian, but I always loved the idea that Lovecraft had, I think the first time I read it was Dreams in the Witch House, I believe, where someone is renting a room and, the 4 corners don't add up to the proper number of degrees that 4 corners should add up to. And this is a concept that I think repeats itself in some of his stories. And again, Hellraiser with the puzzle box, and just at some, I believe I've read stories where like chanting, rituals are more about the patterns of what is being done as opposed to like the words themselves. But words are just patterns of letters, right? So what do you have you ever thought about this? Is it something that interests you? Is it something that bores you? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here at the Low Budget Review Show. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on social media as of this recording, I am still at Ronin5757 on Twitter and on Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals. It's Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIK SMITH 5757. That's all I've got. This has been the Low Budget Review Show. I've been Eric Smith, and until next time, read more books.